Let's now move on to one of the biggest errors that can occur in your program, and that is the syntax error. It's perhaps the most common issue that you'll see. So a syntax error is basically invalid code. It's just improperly written. It does not follow the rules of Python syntax. There are dozens and dozens of ways to create a syntax error. So if you have a syntax error in your code, Python cannot even attempt to execute it. So it doesn't even run any lines of code that you have written, even the ones that are written correctly. So you just have 100 lines of code in your file or in a code block, but just one of them is written incorrectly. None of the lines of code will be executed. So this is distinctly different than what happens in other errors where actually code will be executed up until the point of the error, but this is not the case with syntax errors. So let me repeat that. With syntax errors, no lines of code are executed, even if there's just one mistake. So all of the ones that are written correctly don't count. They will not get executed. So let's go ahead and look at this code block. We have 3 lines of code and attempt to execute it. It says syntax error. So none of these lines of code have run. And if you have the skip traceback extension on, then you'll have to click this little arrow, and that's where you'll see the full traceback, which is just what Python shows you whenever an error occurs. You can trace back the lines of code that led to the error. Okay, so number 1, it says it appeared in line 2. That tells you which line it's in. And then tells you the error itself, syntax error, invalid syntax. And here is line 2. It's been reproduced. You'll see a little arrow that's pretty cool. And that is where Python believes the syntax error is located. And here it is at the exact spot. So we're missing a colon there. I'll just copy and paste it over here. And if I put a colon, then that will be correct syntax. All right, I want to show another a specific type of syntax error called the indentation error. So let's say this time we do have the colon there, but we forget to indent. So whenever we have a colon, the next line, as you know, should be indented as it starts a code block. Here we did not get any indentation, and it says it happened in line 3, expected an indented block. We did not give it one, so we have to indent. And let me just keep that there actually for now. And so this is the correct syntax. Now you'll still get an indentation error if you have, let's have something again. So this is indented, but it is not in a further code block. So every line in a code block must be underneath itself. So that is the indentation error. It's just another type of syntax error. And so one other important thing that I wanted to show here, unfortunately is, I forgot to do it up here, is that this variable num, okay, so none of these lines of code actually get executed. So I'm actually going to restart the kernel real quick over here. So there's nothing in my namespace. There's nothing available. So I'm going to rerun this. This is the very first line. You can see that the code execution has begun at 1. So I overlooked this part. What I wanted to show is that none of these lines of code get executed. So this is just a key fact to know about a syntax error. Even though this is correct syntax, num is assigned the value of 5. If I try to access num, I'm going to get an error, a name error. Num is not defined. So it did not run this, even though it is correct syntax. And the syntax error occurred on line 2. It did not run this line. So the entire block of code or the entire program must have correct syntax in order for any of the lines of code to be run. So this should prove to you that num was this line was never executed. So that is very important to know about a syntax error, because that differs with some of the upcoming errors that we'll see in later videos. All right, so that's it for syntax errors, perhaps the most common issue.